Another singular character with whom I became acquainted early in my ministry was old Mr. Sutton of Cottenham. He had never seen me, but he heard that I was a popular young minister, so he invited me to preach his anniversary sermons. I was in the vestry of the chapel before the morning service, and when the aged man came in and saw me, he seemed greatly surprised to find that I was so young. After gruffly exchanging the usual greetings, he remarked, "I shouldn't have asked you here had I known you were such a bit of a boy. Why, the people have been pouring out into the place all the morning in wagons and dickey carts and all kinds of vehicles. More fools they," he added. I said, "Well, sir, I suppose it will be so much the better for your anniversary. Still, I can go back as easily as I came, and my people at Waterbeach will be very glad to see me." "No, no," said the old pastor. "Now you're here, you must do the best you can. There is a young fellow over from Cambridge who will help you, and we shan't expect much from you." And thereupon he paced the room, moaning out, "Oh dear, what a pass the world is coming to when we get as preachers a parcel of boys who have not got their mother's milk out of their mouths." I was in due time conducted to the pulpit, and the old minister sat upon the stairs, I suppose, ready to go on with the service in case I should break down. After prayer and singing, I read from the book of Proverbs, the chapter containing the words, "The hoary head is a crown of glory." When I had gone so far, I stopped and remarked, "I doubt it, for this very morning I met with a man who has a hoary head, yet he has not learnt common civility to his fellow men." Proceeding with the reading, I finished the verse, "If it be found in the way of righteousness." "Ah," I said, "that's another thing." A hoary head would then be a crown of glory, and, for the matter of that, so would a red head or a head of any other colour. I went on with the service, and preached as best I could, and as I came down from the pulpit, Mr. Sutton slapped me on the back and exclaimed, "Bless your heart! I've been a minister nearly 40 years, and I was never better pleased with a sermon in all my life. But you are the sauciest dog that ever barked in a pulpit." All the way home from the chapel, he kept going on across the road to speak to little groups of people who were discussing the service. And I heard him say, "I never knew anything like it in all my life. And to think that I should have talked to him as I did." We had a good time for the rest of the day. The Lord blessed the word, and Mr. Sutton and I were ever afterwards the best of friends. I shall never forget Mr. Sutton's description of a sermon he had preached. I had the notes of the discourse from his own lips, and I trust they will remain as notes and never will be preached from again in this world. The text was, "The night hawk, the owl, and the cuckoo." That might not strike anyone as being exceedingly rich in matter. It did not so strike me, and therefore I innocently inquired, "And what were the heads?" He replied most archly, "Heads? Why, wring the birds' necks, and there are 3 directly, the nighthawk, the owl, and the cuckoo." He showed that these birds were all unclean under the law, and were plain types of unclean sinners. Night persons were persons who pilfered on the sly. Also people who adulterated their goods and cheated their neighbours in an underhand way without being suspected to be rogues. As for the owls, they typified drunkards, who are always liveliest at night, while by day they will almost knock their heads against a post because they are so sleepy. There were owls also among professors. The owl is a very small bird when he is plucked. He only looks big because he wears so many feathers. So many professors are all feathers. And if you could take away their boastful professions, there would be very little left of them. Then the cuckoos were the church clergy, who always utter the same note whenever they open their mouths in the church, and live on the other birds' eggs with their church rates and tithes. The cuckoos were also, I think, the free willers, who were always saying, do, 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 do. Was not this rather too much of a good thing? Yet from the man who delivered it, the discourse would not seem at all remarkable or odd. The same venerable brother preached a sermon equally singular, but far more original and useful. Those who heard it will remember it for their dying day. It was from this text: "The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting." The good old man leaned upon the top of the pulpit and said, "Then, my brethren, he was a lazy fellow." That was the exordium, and then he went on to say, he went out a-hunting, and after much trouble he caught his hare, and then was too idle to roast it. He was a lazy fellow indeed. The preacher made us all feel how ridiculous such idleness was, and then he said, "But then you are very likely quite as much to blame as this man, for you do just the same. You hear of a popular minister coming down from London, and then you put the horse in the cart and drive 10 or 20 miles to hear him, and then, when you have heard the sermon, you forget to profit by it. You catch the hare, and do not roast it. You go hunting after the truth, and then you do not receive it." Then he went on to show that, just as meat needs cooking to prepare it for assimilation in the bodily system, I do not think he used that word though, so the truth needs to go through a certain process before it can be received into the mind, that we may feed thereon and grow. He said he should show us how to cook a sermon, and he did so most instructively. He began as the cookery books do. First, catch your hare. So, he said, first get a gospel sermon. Then he declared that a great many sermons were not worth hunting for, and that good sermons were mournfully scarce, and it was worth while to go any distance to hear a solid, old-fashioned, Calvinistic discourse. Then, after the sermon had been caught, there was much about it which might be necessary because of the preacher's infirmity, but which was not profitable, and must be put away. Here he enlarged upon discerning and judging what we heard, and not believing every word of any man. Then followed directions as to roasting a sermon. Run the spit of memory through it from end to end, turn it round upon the roasting rack of meditation before the fire of a really warm and earnest heart, and in that way the sermon would be cooked and ready to yield real spiritual nourishment. I'm only giving just the outline of the discourse, and though it may look somewhat laughable, it was not so esteemed by the hearers. It was full of allegory, and kept up the attention of the people from the beginning to the end.